Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to 200 Years of Hamilton County in 15 Minutes, the captivating historical podcast that takes you on a time-traveling journey through the remarkable stories, extraordinary individuals, and significant locations that have shaped the fascinating county here in Indiana of Hamilton. Now, I'm your host, Adam Grubb. Alongside me is the talented storyteller and historian, David Heighway. With each episode, we're going to dive deep into the rich tapestry of Hamilton County's past, uncovering hidden gems, untold tales that span 2 centuries. From the founding pioneers who carved out their livelihoods in this land to the monumental events that have left an indelible mark on its history, will leave no stone unturned. Whether you're a history enthusiast, a curious local, or simply seeking to uncover the hidden gems of Hamilton County, this podcast is your ticket to an unforgettable journey through time. Get ready to immerse yourself in captivating narratives, intriguing anecdotes, and surprising revelations. All in bite-sized episodes designed to fit into your busy schedule. Buckle up, prepare, here we go. David Heighway, Adam Grubb, it is the history of Hamilton County in 200 years. Now, you think about that long stretch of time, David, and all of the stories we could tell, all of the things that have happened in this county. One of the things that we just take for granted, but has truly been here the longest of anything, that's the parks and environment of Hamilton County. So talk to me about the park system, the environment of Hamilton County, the land, how it is today and where it was, really the human interaction as well that has shaped the parks and the environment here in Hamilton County.
Absolutely. It's kind of interesting. I do a lot of programs for school children, 3rd, 4th graders, that sort of a thing. And when I explain to them that this open land that you see today, that's either cornfields or, subdivisions or something like that, was once a giant impenetrable forest, they're just stunned. They have no clue. They cannot conceive of that. But that's literally what it was. For many, many years, there were just a few trails going through the area, particularly up to the north there, and they would, if you got off those trails, you were lost. There was nothing else. So that's what the first settlers came into in the 1820s. They cleared that away and started to establish their farms, different things like that. Had to interact with the environment, had to learn about things like, for instance, wolves. There are stories of wolf attacks, including one on a teacher, and the kids seem to love that story. I don't know why, but
you don't know why, David? I think you do.
So then there's also, for instance, they had to deal with the Great Squirrel Stampede of 1822, and that was a real thing. There were actually a huge collection of squirrels that swept across the county in 1822, ravaged the cornfields, went on for about 2 weeks, ended, and nobody knew what at all had happened. Modern biologists have looked at it and said that it was actually sort of a natural reaction to the changes in the forest. Animal populations were shifting from one side to another. It's just that this one was so remarkable and unique, it stood out from all of the rest of them.
And what many historians don't know is that those squirrels then ended up in my backyard, and that's where they live today. All 40,000 of them in my backyard.
That's how they get to those bird feeders. So
you have the Farley Deer Park.
Yes, that was a kind of a bizarre little incident very, very early in the history, right at the settlement of the county in the 1820s. A gentleman named Farley, James Farley, I think, came into the Carmel area, and while the other pioneers were busy, establishing their property, cutting the trees, planting crops, he decided to set a chunk of his property aside as a deer park. And a deer park, in European terms, is basically a small preserved section of land where a lord of the manor type of person could go hunting, where he would keep a herd of deer that he could hunt at his leisure on his own. And the thing is, a deer park in Indiana in the 1820s is like calling your backyard a squirrel zoo. Mm-hmm. I mean, they are there. There's nothing you can do about that. But for some reason, Mr. Farley wanted to create this kind of natural environment, and it lasted, believe it or not, until the 1960s. Those trees were there until the 1960s. So
we have a history of some natural disasters here as well that have shaped the topography as well as really kind of the environment itself in Hamilton County over 200 years. One of that were floods. Now, yes. We don't think of floods as a major issue for us today, actual floods. We know that roads flood over and there's some flooding in areas. But these were actual floods.
Yes.
Tell me about it.
And they've been going on for the full 200 years. Literally, the first one that anybody bothered to record was in 1823. And that one nearly got up to where the Connor House is today at Connor Prairie. If you know that thing up on the bluffs there, that's how high that got. It was absolutely enormous. These continued at various heights through the centuries. 1913 was the next really, really large flood. And then all the way up until fairly recently. We've been thinking about actually doing some sort of marker down along the White River that shows the various levels through the years. And literally, as you walk along the river walk, if you were to look up in the air, you would actually see the point where the actual flood was. It would be probably about 10, 15 feet above your head.
Now, was this because of torrential rain and I guess the area itself not fully prepared and ready for any type of flood zone and flood work? Why so different than it is today?
Yeah, actually, though, most of those floods have happened in the late 20th century. Although we had the two big ones, 1823 and 1913, there were a lot of very, very high ones that happened in the late 20th century. Now, early on, it was, in fact, mostly melting snow. They happened usually in March or something like that. So that tended to be where that big flow of water came in there. For a while, though, in the 20th century, it took the surveyor's office a while to figure it out. But apparently, many people along the river had built illegal levees and berms and things like that, and really sort of corked the thing up. So that's one reason why we had a lot of different floods at that point in time.
Then we talked last episode about the gas boom and then the bust. This, however, had different consequences than in the diversity of Hamilton County. This natural gas boom and bust actually had issues and brought issues to the environment here in Hamilton County.
Absolutely, because first of all, we're dealing with the 1880s, 1890s. Environment means nothing to them. It's just kind of like get it, use it, and just tear it right up there. So they literally went and they drilled wells everywhere they could find a spot. The way they would advertise it was to run a pipe to the center of town, point it straight up in the air, and light it off. So you had this 15, 20-foot gas flame leaping into the air day and night in the center of your community. And I thought that was a great way to advertise it. And the geologist kept telling them, that's a bad idea. That's really not a good thing to do. And they literally burned away all of the gas. It turns out that the gas field underneath this area, it's called the Trenton Field, was actually one giant field. All of the different pockets were interconnected. So that as a result, every time somebody sunk a gas well, that was deflating the balloon just that much more. So as a result, they literally sucked it out of there. In the 1890s, they actually put up pumping plants to try and suck it out even faster. So it was an interesting situation.
Speaking of 1890, 1896, there was a fish kill.
Yes, that was down on the south side of town. That was the strawboard plant. Strawboard plant was a paper plant, basically. They made kind of a cheap form of cardboard out of straw. They worked, for instance, for the Ball Brothers, glass canning, making those jars. And what happened is they had a pond out behind their place where they would dump all of the liquid that they'd use for breaking down the straw. They used muriatic acid in it. And they managed to break the levee between their pond and the river, which immediately started dumping all that muriatic acid into the river. A scientist later said that what killed all of the fish was not necessarily poisons, but the fact that it took all of the oxygen out of the water. At any rate, down at Broad Ripple, they pulled out tons of dead fish. People were literally scrambling around trying to find water anywhere, not realizing that it actually wasn't that toxic. It was because it was out of oxygen and things like that. And when it was all over, I think they were fined about $250.
Oh, wow.
1890.
And how much would that be now?
Not much.
Still not much.
Yeah, it was kind of like in the 1890s, it was just kind of like, all right, whatever, so.
The first parks that are in Hamilton County, because the park system now, from Carmel to Westfield to Noblesville and Fishers, the Hamilton County park system is important, and they're all run by city, then they're run by the county. There's some political things that happen within the Parks Division, but also there is just the environment itself, and this area finds its green space, it finds its trails, it finds its way to bring animals and wildlife back into Hamilton County. And this is is where it started. Some of the first parks, Browns Woods in Noblesville, Brooks Grove in Fall Creek Township, and Bishop Park near Arcadia. What are special about those parks, and why? How did they even start?
Yeah, the private individuals just looking literally for green space. It would be a place to have picnics, do things like that. Now, Bishop's Parks was kind of fun because, among other things, besides having a spot for reunions, they just sort of a do-it-yourself roller coaster and other things like that. Needless to say, OSHA would not approve of that today. We have pictures of it. It's really pretty scary. But no, it was literally people wanted green space, and you just simply would set aside part of your land, and they could use it for something like that.
Now, the creation of the County Parks Department is part of our history. Now, you would think that would have just been something that happened. It's no big deal. Who cares? They created a Parks Department. Good for them. But there is a story there. There is a history there. There's a reason that happened. And subsequently, how successful it has become since its inception.
Yeah, that happened in the 1960s. They were looking for really kind of running these things a little bit more professionally, organize it more professionally. And you had a lot of people who were wanting the green space because that's the start of the suburban boom. And so you have these families that need this kind of area, and you want to make sure you do it in an appropriate fashion. So that's why we have such a great parks department today that creates these parks, creates a lot of amenities within the parks, actually has a great historical aspect to it as well, up at places like Kotewee Park, over at Coxhall Park. There's some wonderful things over there. So yeah, that was kind of a key factor right there.
David, do you know, I know you do you know, people, that the first official municipal park, city-owned park, was 1927, and it is the park that we know and love so much today, Forest Park in Noblesville. It is the oldest and the first in Hamilton County to be owned by the city. What does that mean? Why is that significant?
It was the first attempt to create a real park. It was the first, as we were talking about, organize the park, have amenities, have things like a center area, the inn as they called it at the time, which is actually still there. It's been changed a little bit. One of the key things was actually the golf course. Make sure you had a good municipal golf course. And the golf course actually is eligible for the National Register of Historic Places. It is literally in its original condition, and it's very, very exciting to see that. But they also had, of course, the baseball field up there, which, while it's been changed a little bit, is still fairly close to the original. And the swimming pool, that was huge when they developed that in the 1930s. That was kind of a very, very key sort of a thing. People were really excited about that.
Well, and it was on the railway at the time, and it has a lot of green space. It has a lot of land, and when you start to go back into that park, it feels like it was planned. It feels like it was on purpose, and that's because it was. So in 1927, that was the first official municipal park in Hamilton County, Forest Park in Noblesville. Now it's time for fun facts. These are fun facts. These are true, according to you, David, correct?
Absolutely.
David Heighway. I'm Adam Grubb. This is 200 years of Hamilton County history. Fishers was nationally known for grave robbing between 1900 and 1904. That is a nod to Fishers. Welcome to the program, David. That was real. That's what they were known for at the time, for 4-year stretch grave robbing. Mm-hmm. Okay. Number 2, there were several independent basketball teams organized in the county in the 1920s, including the Noblesville TNTs, the Fisher Red Arrows, the Carmel Celts, and the Arcadia Buzzards. Now, this was when basketball was just really starting to take hold. This is the independent leagues, and we had 4 teams that we could have watched right here in Hamilton County at any point.
Absolutely.
Were they at all popular? Were they at all good?
Oh, people loved it.
Yeah.
But it was tough finding a place to play. That was the big issue.
Right. Today it would be tough to find a place to park.
Yeah.
16-year-old Wayne Township boy received a patent in 1897 for designing a device to show the rotation of the planets. Fun fact, Hamilton County, 1897, a 16-year-old Wayne Township boy received a patent for designing a device to show the rotation of the planets. What happened to that device? What happened to his patent? What happened to him?
He actually just went on with his life. Unfortunately, he didn't become a famous scientist. He eventually worked over in Anderson. So, but the device is called a tellurian, which is a kind of a thing like that would show how the sun rotates around the moon, how the moon rotates around the earth rotates around the sun. It's a definite device all on its own there. So.
David Heighway, a county historian and a co-host of mine here at 200 Years of Hamilton County History. We talk next episode about the education system in Hamilton County, how it's grown, where it is today, and the 200 years of the education system growing to one of the premiers in the state and the country. That's next on 200 Years of Hamilton County History within 15 minutes. Adam Grubb, David Heighway. We'll see you next episode.